Hello, and welcome to my first YouTube video. So as many of you may have heard, there's currently a raging gun debate going on. People on both sides of this issue shout about how we need gun laws or that we don't need new gun laws, we need more guns. And with so many articles and opinions out there, it might all seem very confusing. Well, don't worry, because I'm here to basically not talk about these issues, like at all. Instead, I'm going to talk about some claims I've heard going around that I think would be interesting to talk about. I think you'll understand as we go along. So yeah, let's begin. And let's start with the easiest claim to, I guess, debunk the 18 school shootings myth. If you hadn't heard, there's been a tweet going around that there have been 18 school shootings as of Parkland in the year of 2018. This figure comes from a gun law advocacy group known as Everytown. This claim has also been tweeted by New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, Senator Bernie Sanders, and has been mentioned many times in the gun control debate that has swept the nation. So let's start off by saying this claim is false. You see, Everytown takes advantage of the general term school shooting and gives a definition that pretty much misleads everyone. Everytown defines school shooting as any time a firearm discharges a live round inside a school building or on a school campus or grounds. This means cases such as a third grader pulling the trigger on a police officer's gun counts as a school shooting. Now, I don't want to make it sound like the number that did involve gun violence were okay, right? They were obviously not. No number is low enough. However, to artificially inflate the number is despicable. Next, we have the assault weapons ban. Currently, there are lots of people saying that the previous assault weapons ban put in place by Bill Clinton was successful and it needs to now be renewed. One of the most notable people would be Dianne Feinstein. I think I might have pronounced that wrong. In fact, Dianne Feinstein handed the president a chart that would look like this. This chart seems to prove Ms. Feinstein's argument, portraying a decrease in mass shooting as well as the number of deaths in mass shooting during the duration of the ban. However, this also seems to be false. This chart seems to be based on a study from, I will not be able to pronounce this, Clairvaux. So this study has a few faults that make it inaccurate and sort of skew the data. First of all, the study uses a unique definition for mass shooting. It defines a mass shooting as a shooting with 6 or more fatalities. Now, for those who don't keep up to date on gun stuff, the term mass shooting has really not been defined in America. However, most studies, at least that I have seen, use 4 fatalities as a threshold. Now, if you were to take Clairvaux data and readjust it for 4 shootings, the visible decrease in incidence and death disappears. Also, Clairvaux' study doesn't involve a lot of actual assault weapons. Before the ban, the data you see here involves only 5 mass shootings with assault weapons. And during the duration of the ban, the data you see here only involves 3 mass shootings. So, taking into account the fact that there are so few actual assault weapons used in this study about how effective the assault weapons ban was, it seems like this isn't really trustable as solid evidence. As for after the ban, the huge spike in mass shootings you see and death could also be seen as irrelevant because it doesn't take into account things such as increase in population. It also doesn't make logical sense. As Gregory Cogger, a professor of political science at the University of Miami, said, "I do not expect the effect of a ban to be instantaneous, nor to end when the ban ends. If there's a certain number of assault weapons in circulation when the ban goes into effect, and these weapons are removed from circulation over time, say if they're destroyed, become ineffective, or are seized by the police, then the effect of a sales ban increases over time." The idea that the ban was ineffectual seems to be backed up by plenty of people, such as Duke University's public policy experts Phil Cook and Christina Goss, who wrote in their book, The Gun Debate, What Everyone Needs to Know, the idea that the ban was ineffectual. Also, a Department of Justice funded study in 2004 said that there were some slight benefits from the assault weapons ban. They were very minimal, and it was hard to address how positive the ban really was. Also, a book labeled Firearms and Violence, A Critical Review, stated a recent evaluation of short-term effects of 1994 federal assault weapons ban did not reveal any clear impact on gun violence outcomes. As for why the ban didn't work, there could be several reasons. It could be because a majority of gun crimes occur with pistols rather than automatic rifles. Even a majority of mass shootings from 1982 to 2017 involve semi-automatic handguns rather than assault rifles. It could have also been the millions of guns grandfathered in that would have been banned under the 1984 assault weapons ban. Or, more likely, the fact that the ban was very easy to get around. The ban focused too much on specific weapon details that gun manufacturers were able to get around by modifying certain parts so that the same weapon is being sold even though it really shouldn't be. Next, we have the Australia claim. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then allow me to explain. Basically, a while back, Australia had a mass shooting that is now known as the Port Arthur Massacre. After this mass shooting, Australia passed strict gun laws to try and stop anything like this from ever happening again. The claim here is that these new laws have stopped mass shootings to this day. Also, it has reduced gun violence and firearm suicide rate. This also seems to be false, or at the very least over-exaggerated. Firstly, to the idea that there have been no mass shootings in Australia. While this is true for Australia, it is important once again to note that mass shooting is a general term and means different things in different countries. In Australia, a mass shooting is defined as a shooting with 5 fatalities, not including the shooter's death. In America, a mass shooting is mostly seen as a shooting with 4 or more fatalities. So there have been shootings in Australia that would count as mass shootings in America. But still, there does seem to be a decrease in mass shooting since the creation of these gun laws. As for the claim that gun-related suicides went down as well as gun-related homicides after the implementation of these gun laws, that seems a little more conflicted. This claim has a lot of heated argument on both sides, making it hard to determine which side is right. People saying the Australian model worked point to the evidence saying that there was a scientifically notable decrease in things such as gun-related homicides as well as suicides. However, people saying that the Australian model didn't help will point out that it's hard to know how much of an effect the ban had, if any. That's why even researchers that seem to like the Australian model clarified that it is hard to tell how much effect the ban really had, especially when you consider the fact that non-gun-related homicides also fell at the same time gun-related homicides were falling. So it's hard to tell really how much it helped. Even the ambassador of Australia voiced this idea, saying that he's not sure that Australia's solution will be America's solution. He said, Australia and the United States are completely different situations, and it goes back to each of our founding. America was born from a culture of self-defense. Australia was born from a culture of the government will protect me. Australia wasn't born as a result of brutal war. We weren't invaded, we weren't attacked, we weren't occupied. That makes an incredible difference even today. So while the Australian model could be promising, it is definitely not the perfect solution as you may have heard. Another thing you might have heard people wanting is a high-capacity magazine ban. Okay, so this claim is fairly more complicated than I originally thought. So the first thing we have to figure out is would a 10 bullet limit slow down the shooter? And in the Parkland shooting, it seems like it might have. If we look at the Parkland shooting, we see the shooting took around 6 minutes, and about 150 bullets were fired. So, assuming that takes a person around 3 seconds to reload a gun, and the shooter had a 10 bullet clip, then with some basic math we can see that he would have spent 1/10 of the time he was doing the shooting reloading. And that's assuming they could have carried 15 separate magazines. So if we look at the Parkland shooting, in this case the shooter had 180 extra bullets that they had not fired and fired 150 bullets. So adding them together, we can get us to 330. Now divide that by 30, which is how many bullets are in one clip. That'll get us to 11 clips that he was carrying with him. So maybe that could have slowed him down too, or maybe that could have stopped him from killing people if he could not have had that many clips. But it's a huge maybe if he wouldn't have been able to carry more clips, considering they probably would have been smaller. Now, of course, there are a lot of flaws with this. My numbers were approximations. I worked under assumption that it would take a person 3 seconds to reload. The truth is, it's hard to pinpoint how long it would take a person to reload because it varies from person to person as well as gun to gun. This is very obviously not accurate data, but maybe based on the short time of this shooting, the additional reloads could have saved some lives. However, this increase in reload time also means that anyone using a gun for self-defense will probably be negatively impacted. If you are approached by more than one person planning to do harm to you, you may find yourself in a situation where you aren't able to protect yourself from the impending dangers. This at least seems to be the argument from the other side of the gun debate. This could be true as there are cases of people needing several bullets to kill one person. If this is true, the extra reload time might make it harder for you to protect yourself from people who wish to do you harm. However, to this argument, you might hear talk about a study of people who were killed from gunshot wounds. This study concluded that people who are killed from 2 to 4 shots, suggesting that even with multiple attackers, you can still protect yourself. However, people could rightly point out that this doesn't take into account missed shots, and no one really knows how many shots they're going to hit in the moment of panic. Also, this is just a funny side note, I found this website that had an article explaining why guns would both slow you down and not slow you down, so that was cool. Also, people point to the assault weapons ban because during this time of this ban, high-capacity magazines were banned. People say since there was no decrease in the amount of people killed during mass shooting, it really wouldn't do anything. And to that I say you could be right, but also keep in mind there were millions of high-capacity magazines grandfathered in, so that probably didn't help. Now let's talk about suicide, and it's rather important since more people die from suicide with a gun than they do from homicide from a gun. Suicide is a big problem, and people have been claiming that to decrease suicide, America should adopt gun policies. The belief is that less guns would result in less people successfully committing suicide. Gun law advocates believe that guns are too effective at killing people or too fast. If guns were harder to get and people started using other methods of committing suicide, they would be far less likely to be successful, both from the method being more likely to fail as well as other methods taking significantly longer in resulting in people having time to realize that maybe this isn't the best choice for them and decide to get help. People oppose this claim, one, by saying that if we look at different countries with stricter gun laws, we see that they can have higher suicide rate. However, this claim is not necessarily true. Suicide is mostly a societal thing. So looking at different countries might not give you the best result on what to do in your country, since you don't really know what other struggles that people might be facing in that country that Americans are not. People also say that if you add gun laws to control to stop suicide, other forms of suicide would simply go up. This claim does seem to have a legitimate backing. If you look at Australia, after they added stricter gun laws, suicide did not go down drastically, and once again it's important to note that this decrease may not be fully attributed to the ban. Other programs, technologies, and communities were being created to help with the issue of suicide that could have tipped the scale. So there is a chance that gun control had no overall effect on suicide. However, once again, you could bring up the argument of a different society. While America and Australia are very similar in nature, there are still some laws, regulations, and societal norms that may need to be taken into effect. That's why I believe it's best to look at studies that take place within America, such as this Harvard study that suggests that gun control decreases suicide rates. It compared states in America that had high gun control with other states in America that had lower gun control and found that fairly consistently the states with stronger gun control had less suicide. What the study did was it looked at gun ownership and compared it to suicide rates in each state. The conclusion of the study was that states with higher gun ownership had higher rates of suicide. Now, of course, this is not perfect either. Firstly, it's correlative and not causative, and it looks at gun ownership, not gun control itself. However, this study is worth keeping in mind. Also, if you're wondering why gun control could lead to suicide rates, well, it's because other forms of suicide are far less likely to kill you than guns. Because other forms of suicide are less likely to kill you than guns. Poisoning yourself, another popular form of suicide, only kills you people 4% of the time, opposed to guns which kill you around 70% of the time. Also, poisoning yourself is slower, giving you time to hopefully realize that there are better alternatives. This could be why even though women attempt suicide more than men die from suicide more often. Men try to kill themselves using guns most of the time, while women try to poison themselves. However, women die from suicide less than men. Okay, so those are the main claims I want to go over. However, these are some quick ones. Speedrun, let's go. Emma Gonzalez bullied the Parkland shooter. No, the quote that's going around as proof of this is taken out of context. Basically, what Emma was saying was she was talking about how Emma was talking about how the Parkland shooter and how he was very dangerous even before he did the shooting. This claim is backed up by other students that shared stories about how the shooter was prior to the shooting. So yeah, there's no reason to believe Emma Gonzalez ever bullied the Parkland shooting. Okay, next, Hitler could have been stopped if the Jew had been given guns. This is also very unlikely considering the fact that Hitler had tanks and planes and bombs. Most historians agree that Hitler could not have been stopped, even if the entire Jewish population in Germany had been armed. Basically, this claim seems to be fairly false and a little disrespectful to the Jewish people, since it makes it seem like they didn't try and fight back. And the last thing I want to talk about is this story about Trump. Now, if you've not heard, President Trump said this.
You know, I really believe, you don't know until you test it, but I think I really believe I'd run in there even if I didn't have a weapon. And I think most of the people in this room would have done that too, because I know most of you.
This attracted a lot of hate from the left. However, later I saw this article going around saying that Trump stopped a man from being killed with a baseball bat. Now, this article may or may not be proof of. This article doesn't really seem to be proof of anything. And that's because the details around the situation are more clouded in mystery than you might think. The witnesses that were at the scene of the crime are conflicted on what happened. Some say Trump did confront the man, while others say he only watched the situation resolve itself. Even the police report of this crime is not very clear on what happened. So this really isn't proof that Trump would have ran to school. Now, just so we're clear, I'm not saying that he wouldn't have. He could have. Yeah, I'm just saying none of us are really able to know. Only Trump knows what he would have done in this situation. And if Trump says he would have run in, then there's really nothing we can do but believe him. Okay, so that's the entire video. That's basically everything I want to go over. I hope you enjoyed it. I did my work researching, so yeah. I don't really know what to say here. Everything else was with the script. Be sure to fact check everything I said. Don't just believe the things I said. If anyone watches this video, fact check it, because I could have got it wrong. I'm just a guy. So, yeah. Bye.